Hey, how's it going? Today's video is about some warm-up ideas. So when it comes to warming up, you know, a lot of us are guilty of one side of the spectrum or the other. Either you skip the workout altogether or you do some BS quad pulls and then you go right into your workout. Some of us can get away with that. On the other side of the spectrum, you have people that do tons and tons of corrective work and prep work and stretching and activating and everything else that oftentimes is just kind of pointless or is just another way that you're procrastinating from getting down to the work. But I'm sure that's not you if you're watching this video. So I have made a video on the simple and sinister warm-up sequence, which I think is great. I think the sequence is great. I don't necessarily think that the video is that great, okay? But that is, if you're not familiar, kettlebell halos, kettlebell goblet squats, and glute bridges. So I think just as a simple 1, 2, 3, that's about as good of a warm-up that will prepare you for just about any workout. So if you haven't seen that already, check that out. But I also want to share with you a few things that I've been adding to my warm-up and that I've been adding in between lifts and supersets as like an active recovery method, okay? And it's pretty simple. Again, it's 3 different things, all right? It's shoulder circles, hip circles, and suitcase carries. So, shoulder circles. Basically, I come from like the foundation of like the FRC car, controlled articular rotation idea, and then I just kind of mix and match and play around with some different ideas from there. So if you're not familiar, the shoulder rotation is all the way up overhead, turning the hand out and around, sweeping forward, right? Just like so. So this just in and of itself feels really, really good. And so I'm doing these like all day, every day, all right? But what I also like to do is just kind of mix it up and add in some elbow hinges and some internal and external rotations along the way, all right? Just kind of whatever feels good. So I might just start off with the hand up, and if you can see here, I might just sweep the arm out and in, out and in. All right. I also like to bring the elbow high and sweep over. All right. I also like to basically do anything that involves like reaching down the back or up the back. So with either 2 or 1 arm at a time, I'll just do something like this. Both sides. Right, so sometimes I'll be slow and strict with it. Sometimes I'll be more dynamic. You know, of course, the FRC method would be way more methodical than like what I'm describing. But the whole idea here is just that, you know, most of us sit at a computer or a desk all the time, so we're like this, or we're holding a phone, our head's all down, you know, modern day posture. And then like when we go to train in the gym, we're usually either pressing or pulling here, pressing or pulling here, maybe doing front raises, maybe doing lateral raises. But the whole idea is that the shoulder joint can go in all these fun directions that we never really get to explore, right? So like the teacup stretch, right? And sometimes I'll just break down the teacup into just the sweep in and out, or just this overhead stretch, sweep back out. All right. So there's really no rule here, and so obviously, like I say, shoulder circles. The whole idea is that you find a pattern, you just kind of work into it and see what feels good for you. Okay? So I do the same basic idea with the hip. So I'm gonna point the camera down for a hot second. So with the hip, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. What I start with usually is just kicking myself in the butt, kicking the heel out, sweeping it forward. Back, forward, and then I'll just kind of come out and around, out and around. Sometimes I'll just bring a leg up, kick it out to the side, just to open up here through the front of the hip. All right, you're just making shapes is the idea. You know, another one that I like to do is like a figure 4 fold around, figure 4 on the back, figure 4 in front. All right, so I think that just getting up on one foot, just balancing on one leg, in the interest of not only balance, but you know, just getting the whole body like awake, for lack of a better term, is something that we oftentimes neglect. So you don't just have to limit single leg work to split squats and like pistols and single leg deadlifts. You can literally just come up onto one foot and move the ankle, rotate the hip out, you know, do some slow kicks out to the side. All that stuff is kind of fair game. You really just want to kind of get in the habit of being able to come up onto one leg at the drop of a hat and be able to independently move through the other side. And if all that stuff is kind of like goofy for you, or you're out of practice, literally just kick a leg out and holds, or kick a leg out to the side and hold. It doesn't have to be complicated, but that's always what I like to do as part of my warm-up or active recovery. Hopefully you can hear me over the airplane, is just get up onto one leg and see how I can kind of move around or just straight up stabilize. All right, and finally, I'll do some sort of suitcase hold or suitcase walk. So I really see this as like, you know, kind of the simplest way to kind of integrate what's going on with your arm and your shoulder down to what's going on in your hip. So even just by standing up tall here, you know, I'm thinking about activating my lats, even activating my pecs, right? Always to help just stabilize this joint. Might even do some shrugs or some circles. Right? And then of course, just adding in a march or a carry for distance. Yeah, and then you're always just thinking about staying nice and tall, really getting into a good activation through, right, that opposite oblique. So you can begin to incorporate both of those ideas with the shoulder circles and the hip stuff as you're holding a weight. So something that I might do is like a slow carry and then just start to do some of these circles. All right? Or even just like stuff here with the wrists as I'm walking. If you want to get super fancy, you could hold on to one side and just hold your balance up on one leg. Work on some of this rotation. All right, it's all fair game. But what you can see there is we're getting into the knots. All right, I think is Dr. Mark Chang calls them the 4 knots. Both the shoulders, both the hips, right? So the more stimulus we can give to the shoulders and the hips in like a low risk situation, low risk training environment, in order to kind of explore novel ranges of motion, all the better. And then by adding the suitcase carry or the suitcase hold, all right, we're getting into the core stability, obviously, and we're tying those shoulders to the hips together. There's lots of different ways, obviously, to you know, to interpret that that concept. Crawling is another good one, but again, just kind of ranting here on some ideas I've been playing around with lately, that if you just take a little bit of time to experiment, you'll probably find that there's a couple of angles, there's a couple of moves, a couple of drills that you'll probably intuitively find that really benefit you, and it won't take hardly any extra time or really any extra effort to add them into your warm-up or as active recovery within the context of your workouts. So move those shoulders around, move those hips around, add in a suitcase carry to, you know, really get in some lifting into your prep and corrective work, and enjoy. We'll see you in the next video.